Where do we come from? Why is the world both beautiful and broken? These questions have shaped humanity for millennia. We search for answers everywhere. Science, philosophy, art. But for billions, the journey starts with Genesis. Genesis isn't just ancient history, it's the story of beginnings, of the world, of humanity, and of the source of both our hope and our pain. It claims our universe is no accident, but the creation of a good and powerful God. Our deepest problems, Genesis says, aren't just bad luck. They're rooted in a broken relationship with our Creator. Yet Genesis doesn't leave us in despair. It plants a seed of hope, a promise that the fractures in our world will one day be healed. God hasn't abandoned creation, He's set a plan of rescue in motion. As we open Genesis, we're not just reading old stories, we're exploring the questions that define our lives. This book invites us to discover the foundation of a hope that has sustained people for generations. It's the beginning of a story that still shapes our world. Genesis is the opening chapter of the Bible's grand narrative. It asks us to consider, what if our story is part of something much bigger? Let's step back to the very beginning. Genesis unfolds in two sweeping acts. The first, chapters 1-11, is the primeval history creation, the fall, the flood, and Babel. Stories that explain why our world is both wondrous and wounded. These chapters move quickly, spanning generations and revealing the roots of human struggle. Then in chapter 12, the focus narrows. God chooses one man, Abraham, and his family. This is the patriarchal history, an intimate saga of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Here, God's rescue plan shifts from the universal to the particular. Through Abraham's family, God promises to bless all nations. Genesis's two halves are inseparable. The first shows why rescue is needed, the second how it begins. The rest of the Bible builds on this foundation. Genesis is the story of both our problem and the promise of its solution. Genesis opens with a breathtaking claim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Over 6 days, God brings order, beauty, and life, declaring it all good. On the sixth day, God creates humanity, not just as another creature, but in His own image. To be made in God's image means we're designed to reflect His character and creativity. We're given a unique vocation to steward creation, to cultivate its potential, and to extend the goodness of Eden. This is not exploitation, but partnership, humanity as co-rulers with God. Our original design is one of dignity, purpose, and relationship, with God, each other, and the world. Genesis insists we are not accidents, but intentional creations with a glorious purpose. We're called to make the world a place where heaven and earth meet. This is the blueprint for being fully human. It's a vision of profound hope. But something goes wrong. In Eden, God gives humanity freedom. With one boundary: don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This command is a test of trust. Will humans rely on God's wisdom or seize autonomy? Enter the serpent, sowing doubt. Did God really say? Tempted, the humans eat the forbidden fruit, choosing their own way over God's. Instantly, shame and fear replace innocence. They hide, from each other and from God. The harmony of Eden shatters. Relationships fracture, between humans, with God, and with creation. The consequence: exile from the garden, and the entrance of death into the human story. This moment, the fall, explains the brokenness we see in the world and in ourselves. Humanity's choice sets off a chain reaction of pain and separation, yet even here a glimmer of hope remains. God's story isn't over. The world is broken but not abandoned. The journey continues. The fallout from Eden spreads fast. Cain murders Abel. Jealousy and violence take root. Generations later, humanity spirals into corruption and pride. God grieves over the world's evil and sends a flood, but preserves Noah, a righteous man, and his family. After the flood, God makes a covenant with Noah, promising never again to destroy the earth this way. But human pride resurfaces at Babel, where people unite to build a tower to the heavens, seeking their own glory. God scatters them, confusing their language and dividing the nations. Genesis shows a world longing for unity and purpose, but trapped in cycles of rebellion. Yet, God's grace persists. He keeps reaching out to humanity. The stage is set for a new beginning. Out of the chaos, God will call one man to start something new. The story of rescue is about to take a dramatic turn. Hope is not lost. At humanity's lowest point, God calls Abram, later Abraham, to leave everything and trust Him. God's promise is bold. Abraham will become a great nation, receive a land, and be blessed. Through Abraham, all peoples on earth will be blessed. This is the reversal of Babel's curse and Eden's loss. Abraham's journey is one of radical faith, leaving the known for the unknown, trusting God's word. The covenant with Abraham becomes the backbone of the Bible's story. God's rescue plan now runs through this one family. The blessing lost in Eden will be restored to the world through Abraham's descendants. Genesis pivots from universal tragedy to personal promise. The hope of the world is now tied to a single family's story. The adventure of faith begins. Genesis doesn't sugarcoat its heroes. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their families are deeply flawed, marked by fear, deception, rivalry, and brokenness. Abraham lies about his wife. Jacob deceives his brother. The family is torn by favoritism and jealousy. Yet through every failure, God's faithfulness endures. The promise passes from Abraham to Isaac, then to Jacob, who becomes Israel after wrestling with God. Jacob's 12 sons, the ancestors of Israel's tribes, are a mess, but God's plan moves forward. Genesis is honest. Human failure is constant, but God's commitment is greater. He works through, and often in spite of, human weakness. The story is not about perfect people, but a perfect promise. God's faithfulness is the thread that holds it all together. Genesis ends with Joseph, Jacob's favored son, betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. Joseph suffers injustice, prison, and abandonment, but God is at work behind the scenes. Through a series of reversals, Joseph rises to power in Egypt, saving countless lives during famine. When his brothers come seeking food, Joseph forgives them, declaring, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." This is Genesis's message in a sentence. Human evil is real, but God's purpose prevails. The family of Abraham is preserved, but not yet in the promised land. Genesis closes with hope. A wounded family, but a future secured by God's promise. The story points forward. A descendant will one day crush evil and bring true restoration. Genesis is not just about beginnings. It's about hope that endures. The journey from creation to covenant sets the stage for everything to come. The questions at the beginning find their answer in a God who never gives up. The story continues.